Hey y'all, it's Sarah Beth here. I hope you're having a great Sunday. I know I am because that means it's time for my latest video, Women in Science. In this video series, I plan on recreating a famous female scientist from history in CAS, or Create a Sim if you're new to Sims 4, all while giving you a little bit of their history. And this week's female scientist features Mary Anning, one of history's first female paleontologists. Mary Anning was born to Richard and Molly Anning in 1799 in Lyme, Regis, England. Richard and Molly had 10 children, but unfortunately only 2 survived to adulthood, their son Joseph and daughter Mary. This wasn't unusual at the time, as infant and child mortality was extremely high in the early 19th century. Despite this, Mary was definitely a survivor. When she was a little over 1 year old, she was struck by lightning. According to local accounts, her babysitter, one neighbor named Elizabeth Haskins, and 2 other women, were watching a local horse show beneath a large elm tree. Elizabeth Haskins was holding Mary at the time when the tree was struck by lightning. All 3 women were killed, but Mary was able to be revived. Friends and family described her as being a curious, lively, and intelligent child. Her father, Richard, worked as a cabinet maker and carpenter. He supplemented his income by collecting and extracting fossils and selling them to the many tourists that visited Lyme Regis. Lyme Regis had quickly become a major tourist destination in England at the time, as travel abroad to Europe became dangerous due to the Napoleonic Wars and the French Revolutionary Wars. Most locals preferred to spend their holidays near home. Lyme Regis is known for its beautiful scenery as well as its Jurassic deposits, which are rich in ancient marine fossils. Paleontology was in its infancy at this time, and fossils were known as curios. It was thought they were merely known animals that had migrated to a new place or were killed during the flood described in the Bible. However, as scientists began to study these fossils, they discovered they were in fact ancient mysterious animals that had long gone extinct. A market for these unique curios developed, and many locals took advantage of it. Richard Anning was one of them. Richard, his son Joseph, and little Mary were often seen exploring the cliffs by the sea, searching for fossils that had been exposed due to erosion by storms and waves. Now, don't go thinking this was just a tame little walk on the beach looking for rocks and seashells. It was extremely dangerous. Frequent and violent storms could suddenly develop. Cliff sides were known to suddenly collapse, and it was very common for fossil hunters to be seriously injured or killed. It was during one of these cliffside collapses that Richard was injured. He survived, but his injuries, plus tuberculosis, led to his death in 1810 at the age of 44. Mary, her mother, and her brother Joseph were left destitute and in debt following the death of her father Richard. However, they managed to find a small but steady income through government financial aid and their fossil hunting business. In 1811, her brother Joseph found a curious-looking skull on the side of a cliff. Mary found the rest of the skeleton, a whopping 5.2 meters long, that's 17 feet, a few months later. She was only 11 years old at the time. The family sold the fossil in its entirety to a local lord. It soon made its way to the British Museum. Experts initially thought it was the remains of an unusual-looking crocodile, but further study identified it as an ichthyosaur, the first one of its kind to be described. Mary and her brother Joseph found several more complete skeletons of multiple ichthyosaur species. Their mother, Molly, ran the marketing side of the family fossil hunting business until her children were old enough to take over. Mary resumed full control of the company in 1825. Joseph had left the business to become an upholsterer, but he did some fossil collecting with his sister when he was able. Mary was able to save up enough money to buy a house with a storefront in 1826 in downtown Lyme Regis. She called it Anning's Fossil Depot. Mary, like many other fossil hunters and collectors at the time, was self-taught on the topic of paleontology and anatomy. She was known to have spent hours studying the fossils she and her brother collected, as well as reading papers and manuals on the topic. This was not uncommon, and many fossil experts emerged across all parts of society. She soon became well known for her expertise in the field, and early paleontologists such as Henri de la Beche, Richard Owen, William Buckland, and Louis Agassiz have frequently consulted with her and accompanied her on fossil collection excursions. So much so that Mary often lamented to her friends that she felt taken advantage of, as documented in many letters to friends. They would use her expertise and publish groundbreaking papers without ever acknowledging her contribution. This was definitely not uncommon at the time, as female scientists were frequently counted not worthy enough to be credited for their work. Mary had expressed an interest in joining the Geological Society of London, but she was not allowed, as the society did not allow women to join until 1904. However, not all male paleontologists and geologists were so cavalier in their treatment of Mary Anning. Louis Agassiz thanked and acknowledged her expertise alongside that of Elizabeth Philpott in his book Studies of Fossil Fish. She was also well respected by her close friend Henri de la Beche, who became a famous geologist, and they often collaborated. So what are some other famous discoveries she made? How about the plesiosaur? Mary discovered the first partial plesiosaur skeleton in 1821 and found a complete plesiosaur skeleton in 1823 and 1830. She also found this spectacular fossil of a fish called this, and a pterodactyl. She also proposed the idea that these curious rocks were coprolites. That's fossilized poop. Mary understood that studying coprolites was important for understanding an animal's diet. William Buckland officially described the concept of coprolites, but he credited Mary Anning for coming up with the idea. So what ultimately happened to Mary Anning? After opening her fossil store in 1826, she ran her business for the next 20 years. Over that time, she never married, and she was often seen collecting fossils accompanied by her favorite black and white terrier named Trey. Her business was moderately successful, but a series of physical accidents, a bad investment, and a harsh economic environment left Mary nearly destitute towards the end of her life. She began to suffer from breast cancer at the age of 45 and was unable to work and relied on laudanum for pain relief. She was to the point of selling her furniture to pay for bills, when the Geological Society of London, hearing of her plight, formed a pension for her to help support her during her final years. Mary Anning died of complications of breast cancer on March 9, 1847, at the age of 48. She is currently buried along with her brother Joseph, who followed her in death in 1849. Mary's legacy is only now being fully understood. Even though she published one professional article, there is an abundance of correspondence between her and her contemporary scientists. As more correspondence is being uncovered detailing her life's work, we are learning more and more about the contribution she made to modern paleontology. Her fossil discoveries are still contributing to our understanding of these species, and further studies of these fossils have yielded new species. Her work, amongst other scientists, served as a foundation of research by which Charles Darwin used to form the theory of evolution. And of course, the 1908 childhood rhyme many of you might know celebrating her life. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to learn more about women in science.